Welcome, everyone. I hereby open the Planning Commission work session. Can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Salazar,
Present.
Vice Chair Bergen, whose microphone isn't working, but she's waving hello.
We'll count that as present.
Commissioner Cuevila,
Here.
Commissioner Gill,
Present.
Commissioner Buck, and Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
And Commissioner Schmunk, who is, the camera is searching for him.
Here.
And he's here.
All right, excellent. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda? All right, seeing none, I would like to ask members of the audience who are joining us by phone or online to please keep yourselves on mute until you are called to provide public testimony. This meeting is a work session only, so there will actually not be a time for business from the audience this evening. The next opportunity we'll have for business from the audience is our December 6th meeting. So if you're joining us today to share business from the audience, we invite you to our meeting on December 6th at 6 p.m. And you're also more than welcome to watch this meeting and join us to hear about the updates that we have. So next, I'd like to call the agenda item for the Willamette Lane Park and Recreation District Comprehensive Plan update from Chelsea Hartman.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm really excited to be joining you all tonight. I'm filling in for Monica as she's now out on leave. So this is one of the projects I'm taking over for her. And I'm really excited to join you tonight to discuss Willamette Lane's comprehensive plan update. Willamette Lane staff introduced the project at your April 5th, 2022 work session of the Planning Commission in your role as the Springfield Committee for Citizen Involvement. And at that meeting, the committee approved the project's community engagement plan. And per the approved plan from that meeting, Willamette Lane and its consultants are here tonight to provide an update on the initial findings of the needs assessment phase of the project, which is nearly complete. Willamette Lane and its consultants team will also be seeking input from the Planning Commission on whether the analysis, research, and engagement efforts done so far are adequate to move forward with the final project phases. These findings will inform the next 20 years of priorities in Willamette Lane's comprehensive plan, and the plan is estimated for completion in late spring of next year. To incorporate this updated plan as the recreation element of the overall Springfield comprehensive plan, the Planning Commission will provide a formal recommendation to City Council next year. And eventually, the City Council and Lane County Board of Commissioners must co-adopt Willamette Lane's updated plan, and that process will involve public hearings and adoption of an ordinance. The city is dedicating staff time to stay informed, provide input in the process so far, and to manage the adoption process coming up. So I'd like to introduce the project team here tonight. We have Christina Bowe with Willamette Lane here. We also have Kenny, Willamette Lane's Community Engagement Director, and Jeffrey with Barry Dunn, the consultant team working with Willamette Lane, who will be leading the presentation tonight. And I'll pass it over to you all, whoever wants to kick off.
I'm trying to share this here. Hopefully you all can see it. Let's see here. Okay, great. Everybody seeing a presentation slide? Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for having us. I'll just do a quick hello. Nice to see you all again. And we're excited to share updates. I'm going to hand it off to Jeff at Barry Dunn, who's going to do a little presentation for you about progress that we've made and some of the findings, as Chelsea said, and then we'll be available for questions at the end.
Okay, thank you, Christina. And members of the commission, my name is Jeff Milkus. I work out of an office in Gresham, so I'm fairly local. I am a former Springfield resident. And and try to bring with me to this project close to 40 years work in the Parks and Recreation field. So I'm very pleased to be here tonight to be able to take you through some of the key findings. We've been working on this project since last January, and because of that, we have much more information than we're able to share tonight in our time. But there are other opportunities. There's our webpage that has quite a bit of information on it that Christina will share with you here in a bit. And we also have a town hall meeting on Wednesday night that will present additional information. So let's jump right in. Let's go to the first slide. Christina will be driving the slides for us tonight. There we go. So as I'm assuming, it's never good to assume, but I'm assuming you know that Willamette Lane is the Parks and Recreation provider for the Springfield, and particularly the Springfield Urban Growth Boundary, which is what we use as our study area. Provides recreation, athletics, the large facilities, 2 aquatic facilities. They're steward of 46 parks, about to be 47, and they are nationally recognized as a leader in the field. In fact, they recently received an accreditation that among 6,000 some agencies in the United States, they're one of 200. And, you know, just really a top, high performing Parks and Recreation agency, as they have been for their last 75 years. So one of the questions is, why update the comprehensive plan? Well, this is an update to the 2012 plan, and a lot has changed since then, population-wise, and also they've added a tremendous amount of natural area trails and other recreation opportunities for the community, from 186 to over 1,000 acres, as a matter of fact. Again, population growth has increased, diversity has increased and continues to increase. The new accreditation, there's just a lot of reasons why. Plus, it's really good practice every 5 to 10 years to begin thinking about an update to your map, your roadmap for your services. Next. This is where we're at. We started in January.
Sorry, I just
Yes.
wanted to interrupt and let you know that what we can see on our screens includes your notes. And I just wanted you to know that. We're
You
not
know, I
seeing
don't.
the presentation slide. So if you want to fix that, I just wanted you to know about it.
Okay, I'm gonna try sharing
Commissioner,
again. I apologize.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm not even
Yeah.
sure that I'm not working off of notes. I'm not even sure what the notes say. So it's probably a good thing. Uh,
This is my fault. I apologize. Zoom always throws me for, hopefully you're seeing a full slide presentation
I think
now.
I
That's
think
full
we are
slide
now.
Mhm.
Okay,
Now we are.
thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Again, I appreciate that comment. So again, the project timeline goes January 22 through June of 23. We'll take you through the timeline in a little bit. We are a little more than 50% completed right now in the study, and you can see I have to move us a little bit out of the way from the picture, but you can go to willamalane.org/future, and there's again a whole lot of information and updates and documents there that'll help to inform where we've been and where we're going. Okay, just very briefly, this plan is really based on heavy, robust public engagement. I can show you kind of just a few of our steps. We started with a strategic kickoff back in January. We brought members and stakeholders for the project together. We then created a work plan, the community outreach plan. We refined the schedule. We tried to define expectations. We went into information gathering, where we just tried to do the needs assessment and tried to talk to as many people as we could through different methods. We're now in the findings and visioning. The second, when we finish this project or finish this section, we'll go to actually writing the draft plan. Next. So these are some of the things, some of the items that will be included in the plan that are deliverables to the district. We did a complete and very comprehensive demographics analysis using information both from the census, from the Portland State research folks, and those other opportunities. We looked at parks and recreation trends around the country, national and regional and local. We looked at the program analysis, and we're still working in that area, meaning what are the gaps in recreational services that may need to be addressed in the plan. We looked at park and facility assessments. We came and looked at every single component and amenity in each of the parks, kind of open up the hood and see what's inside. We focused on natural areas. We've got quite a bit of focus on trails, both from the regional standpoint and from what's available just within the district. We use what we call the GRASP level of service analysis, and we'll show you some of those results here in a few moments. But basically, rather than just look at how many acres of parkland, we looked at from the experience standpoint. What does the user experience when they go? How many components and things are available in the parks? Do parks have a place to sit, to play, to walk? And what are those that make up the level of service? We're able then to map things and to know really where gaps exist, and we'll share. Maintenance and operations evaluation to look at what efficiencies and effectiveness the maintenance teams have. We looked at financial and organizational analysis, everything from staffing to the investment the district makes. We're providing recommendations in terms of alternative funding, different partnerships. We're providing implementable recommendations, and of course, some performance measures that will help expand from the 2012 plan. The 2012 plan was the last time that the district went through this process. At each step of the way, we have tried to incorporate principles of diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice in terms of frequency of use of programs. What are desires from different ethnic background groups? We look at how communication is effective and what are preferred methods. What is the ease of use of, say, the website, and really how to measure how welcome people feel in parks and facilities. We engage the community, and you can see there's multiple ways of getting there, from surveys to social media to intercept to focus groups, and we took advantage really of most all of these as we could. We ended up with 3,866 touches through October, and those are where an individual within the Springfield community took the time to actually provide us information, sit in a meeting, fill out a survey, or provide at an intercept event their prioritization, say, for programs or activities or facilities. We took that information and also realized that there were some special focuses that we really needed to incorporate. So focus groups have been held for teens, for the Latinx community, natural areas, for the tribal communities, trails, accessibility, inclusion, and we're yet to get there, but we will be working with community wellness. Again, just about 4,000 touches, which in my experience as an individual who does master planning for different agencies around the country, this is a really, really good number, and quite a bit of information that allows us to kind of segment and kind of slice and dice a lot of the data to unpack and repack so that we can really draw conclusions from what we know. The survey, probably the single most important, was in two pieces, and we mailed really, I think it was sent to more than 3,500. I think it was closer to 4,000, but the survey link was sent as well. Basically, there were two kinds of surveys wrapped into one. We had a random statistically valid survey that was indeed statistically valid with the results. We received enough responses. And then after that was done, we launched the survey again, encouraging all Springfield residents to complete it. And we ended up in total with just under 1,600 responses, which again is a really good number for this kind of survey research. What we learned, we'll take you through some of the results now. The age distribution is quite interesting. You'll notice that people who are 0 years old, the babies up through 14, really aren't changing all too much. There's a little bit of change, but really we project over the next number of years that this will be fairly stable. So how it directly intersects with the programs from Moemeling are that say youth sports will continue at a similar level. Classes and activities for children can continue. They have should have a good good way to plan for the future with that. Now, when we look further into 55 and older, you'll see that the age groups are actually aging. So community in Springfield is getting older. The median age, according to the census data, went from 34 to 38 between 2010 and 2026. And again, what this tells us is that as the community ages, there's an impact on the recreation programs, on the facilities, and indeed on the parks. Next. We looked at the racial group, the ethnic background of folks to see kind of where we stand. We looked at trends. We know that the community is 82, almost 83% white. What's important here is that the community is becoming more diverse. People of Hispanic background are now at 14, almost 15%, and we expect to see that grow to about 17% during the next 5 to 10 years. We know that was much less during the 2012 master planning process. So again, the lesson, the takeaway here is that there are opportunities for the district to reach out, market, do outreach to individuals of Hispanic, Latinx background. And we did that in the survey intentionally so that we could learn more about needs and desires. We looked at district residents in terms of disability, and we know that there are 19% of the district residents that have some form of disability. We know the state of Oregon is only 14%. So really 1 out of 5 district residents has some form, or almost 1 out of 5, some form of disability. Then we looked at to see what kind of disabilities those are. And these numbers, obviously some greater than 19, because many people have more than one disability that they may report. So this tells us and tells the district that that inclusion and programs for individuals with disabilities are somewhat of a priority, and particularly as that defines, say, the kind of playgrounds they might put in, that inclusive playgrounds are probably fairly important in terms of prioritization. So we talked a little bit about strengths and opportunities and threats. We did SWOT analysis with staff and with others. Areas of improvement during the engagement. We thought we would share some of these. There's a desire for additional class and activity times. Communication with people who were non-users. Again, our survey, when we did the survey, that's one of the reasons to really focus on the statistically valid survey, because it has the opportunity to reach people that may not be using the parks or the facilities or the programs. Provide more volunteer opportunities, bilingual signage. You can see the list. Next slide. Along that same line, additional recreation activities came loud and clear that for adults, in this case 21 to 50, but really 18 to 50 is what we've learned. Really in a demand, there's a gap in terms of the programs that are offered. So while the focus has been on youth, and the district has done an excellent job aligning with their partners to create and provide camps and the One Pass and other opportunities, there are some gaps in programming for those ages. We know that pickleball is becoming ever more important. We know swim lessons are really a high priority. One of the highest priorities was outdoor programs and specifically environmental education. There were barriers that we found having to do that might limit access to opportunities. Pedestrian walking routes to parks, there are quite a few barriers, and we'll show you some of those. Again, district outreach to non-users, the accessibility and when facilities are available. Next. And we acknowledge that the COVID pandemic, of course, had something to do, quite a bit to do with the recent opportunities that were kind of placed on hold for facility opportunity. So when we ask folks, do you use and why do you not use services, parks, and recreation facilities? It's no surprise that lack of time ranked right there at the top. It generally does in many of these surveys. But what's interesting are the next two: not aware of programs or not aware of facilities available. While district residents are more or less very, very familiar with the district and familiar with say facilities, they know there are swimming pools and the like. They're not necessarily overall as aware of programs as they could be. And again, this is interesting because the district does a really good job communicating to to district residents, and they work really hard at it. And so we need and will continue to help unpack these two items and try to better understand it. So we ask people about how welcome they feel in the parks and in the facilities, and on a scale of 1 to 5. To be 4.4 tells us that there really are very, very welcoming in the facilities, and this speaks to their customer service. It speaks to how people directly feel about spending time in the parks and in the facilities. What's important here, what's interesting, one of the takeaways is that people of Hispanic and Latino background are almost just the same as folks who are, of the rest of the population, which means that virtually everybody in the community then is feeling pretty welcome, and that's a cause for celebration. Next. We then ask folks about importance of facilities. What is important to you? Rank 1 through 5, and we ask them to list their top 10. Or check the boxes for top 10. And these are the things that came in. You'll notice there's in the data, there's a drop off, but park safety and maintenance, natural areas, trails, and restrooms in parks. After that, there is a bit of a drop off. The indoor pool, there are 2 of them, and that is still very, very important to residents. But again, when asked about the 10 of all the survey respondents, 9 out of 10 said park safety and maintenance. Next. So then we made it a little more difficult in the survey, and we asked people, just tell us your top 3 future priorities. What are you looking at in the future? Well, trails and bike paths, expansion of trails, connection of trails, both soft surface and paved. Really very, very important for folks. The top item, outdoor swimming pool, and again, park safety and maintenance. So given that trails is the top item, we're presenting also the top 3 priorities for improvement of the trail system. Which parts of the trails, how should we go forward? Well, soft surface hiking trails and scenic settings. And we know across the Eugene Springfield area that there are some really, really nice hiking opportunities with buttes and all. Problem is they're kind of loved to death. And so given other opportunities and a potential trails plan for Lane County, we look forward to hopefully seeing even more expansion. Also important is connection between existing trails and, of course, accessible walking trails. And the accessible walking trails are for the most part without a lot of elevation and sometimes paved. We've got paved paths close to home as well in there. So you can see that those numbers, when you're up around 77, 75, 64%, those are some significant numbers that really ring home the need for those priorities. Equestrian and bike trails are important in the community, but not quite as important. And you can see the survey as one one area there, one data point, would say. We also were very excited to see that the survey provided opportunities for people to write in comments. And our survey respondents, 1,300 and some, were very passionate about telling us what they believed. And we ended up with over 600 survey comments. And these are some of the general themes that folks took time to ensure that we understood and wrote. And what you see here are not in any particular order. They're not one more important than another, but they are repeated, very much repeated comments. So you'll see like outdoor pools and access to dog parks and convenient facility hours, programs for middle-aged people. And so I guess the point is that as we look at the survey, we look at engagement, we look at other ways, other documents and goals and other intercept engagement opportunities, some of the same responses, the answers continue to come up. So now we'll kind of slide over for a moment to some of our inventory and site visits. As I said a few moments ago, we went into the parks and we took a careful look at each and every one of the components. Some of the observations that we made during the time of the inventory was that there seems to be a good standard for trailheads. Park signage seems to be fairly standardized, fairly branded. We looked at playgrounds. Some of the courts need updated. Some of the playgrounds will need to be updated. The system somewhat lacks what we call a signature park, and that is a park that people would want to look to go to more than others. That's kind of a kind of a special opportunity with many components and opportunities. There's a wide range of parks within the neighborhood park classification, meaning that neighborhood parks near where people live, some of them are very nice, and some of them don't have quite the opportunity that others do. And so that's part of what our mission was to figure out where the level of service is in terms of how far parks were from folks' homes, because we know the closer you are, the more likely you are to use your park. And that being the standard is really a quarter of a mile from someone's home or a 10-minute walk. So we looked when we went into each park, we used GIS data. In other words, we tracked down to the exact location for each one of the components. And again, when we did the inventory, then we provided a copy of this inventory back to the district, and we made sure that it was absolutely correct. We ranked and rated each of the, or not ranked as much yet, but we rated each of the components on a 1, 2, or 3 scale and gave them those points based on how good they were in terms of meeting the community's needs. Were they kind of tired and need to be replaced, or were they really in great shape? And at the same time, we tried to look at what impact on the neighborhood would each of those components have, and what impact would they have on the community overall. Meaning, was there a showcase, or say a dog off leash park or a pickleball court that may draw people from a few neighborhoods away? So just looking at the neighborhoods here, the neighborhood parks, you can see that there is a fairly substantial kind of difference between some parks that have a lot, like Meadow Park and Fort Park, that are up there with many components. And then down at the bottom, there's some that don't have quite as many components. And not every park needs to be that kind of gold standard park, but in terms of neighborhood, really important that we get to the point where everybody has equal access to parks that have what we consider to be a target of 3 to 4 amenities or components. So the average park score here was 24. And you can see then, if you're at 24, you can see there where those are, you've got some that have a little bit less, some that have quite a bit less, and then you've got some that have even more over the average. There's no 100% score here. These are based on both the quantity of components and the quality of components, which means that if you take a park and you put, 10 components, you're obviously going to score very well, and rightfully so, because there'll be those things for people to do, and the greater the experience. So now we talk about walkable access, because to us, walkable access is kind of a key. Excuse me. And so what we learned here when we map this is that these areas of the community, if you're purple, it means you're at a target of approximately 4 components, or that average score. If you're in the yellow, it means you have outdoor recreation opportunities in your neighborhood parks or in your parks, but it isn't quite to 4. It isn't quite to the standard. And then if you're at 23% and you're in the gray area, those are population that may or may not be living in, these gray areas may be industrial areas, but 23% of people in the district do not have access within a 10-minute walk. They could be living across the street from a park, but if the park doesn't afford itself for you to get to because there's a busy street or a barrier, you don't get, in a sense, you don't get credit. One thing that we learned that I'm sure that the district is going to pay attention to moving forward is the little box here at the bottom suggests that the purple areas that have at target have the least crime within the neighborhoods. They are the least diverse and have the highest median household income. Not unusual in many communities, but I think it's probably something that from an access standpoint that the district will want to pay attention to. Next slide. So then we looked at what happens in terms of we call drivable access or neighborhood access to get to a park that you're not going to walk to. If you can drive to a park, this is a point for celebration. 99% of all Springfield residents can get to within a mile of their home a park with at least those 4 component at the standards. So the system, although it may not be walkable in the same way, is really distributed widely across the system. So I think the takeaway here is that the district will want to reach forward and aspire for the walkable target. But right now there aren't a huge amount of people in the district that simply can't get to their park if they're willing to navigate the barriers. So now we'll kind of move toward the kind of the level of service from what it all means. Next. I need to move us down here. Okay, we did some regional comparisons first, I guess. We looked at Umatilla because it's a tiny community, but these are other Oregon communities that we have completed the GRASP system or their master plans, and so it just gives you an idea. We always try when we do benchmarking or comparative analysis to be sure to compare apples to apples. And I know that we may not have completely gotten there on this. We have some other benchmarking and other comparative analysis that may get a little closer, but this is certainly interesting. You can see the red areas are areas where the district may lag just a little bit behind the average. So the average is over here on the right at 1.0, but you can see that for parks per 1,000 people, it speaks to density. And you can see that they're a little below what the average is, but pretty close. In the green area below, average number of components per site is a little bit over the average, which is great. The average number of, or the score per site kind of tracks the same thing, number of components within the parks. You go down to the bottom, the percent of total area with a level of service is really good. It shows that there are many parks that are pretty well distributed, I think is the best way I can explain that. Next. So this is our project timeline. And you can see that we started in January, we got to November, and right now we are in findings and visioning near the bottom. And lo and behold, it is November. And so I think we're online or a little bit actually ahead of where we, what the schedule suggests. Next. So what's next? Well, we have a town hall meeting tomorrow evening, 6:00 p.m. It'll be both in person and virtual to provide not only the information that we've provided you tonight, but a whole lot more. And the survey responses will be really highlighted in that presentation. So we also have our finding and visioning where, decisions haven't really been made. We're still been looking for input from the community. And so we expect on Thursday, or I'm sorry, on tomorrow, really to start thinking about for the first time, what do we do with all the findings that we've got? And that process will go on through the end of the month. We'll then, starting in December, we'll review the findings and we'll get the draft plan together, hoping for an adoption by June. And of course, we'll have a co-adoption with the city and the county. And I think that probably is it. I'm assisted by my colleague James Mickle, who unfortunately couldn't be with you or couldn't be with us tonight, but he's over at a planning commission meeting, I think, for the county. So, Christina, do you have anything to add? I think that kind of concludes this, and we're available for questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. That was a really thorough, or thanks, Jeff. That was a thorough presentation. And yeah, really, we're grateful for the outreach that Willamelaine has done. And I personally was able to attend one of the focus group sessions, and I thought it was a really great, really well-run meeting that did a great job of engaging the folks who were a part of that. So yeah, congratulations and kudos
Thank
again
you.
for the work you've done. And with that, we'll take questions from commissioners for either Jeff or Christina. Commissioner Bergen?
Thank you. And I'm hoping that this microphone's working. Can you hear me? Good.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Well, thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for that report. That was really awesome. I am a lifetime Springfield resident. So to be able to see who has come, and I actually participated in the survey. So to be able to see a survey that was out there for the community input and all of the information and the thought process that you guys put into that once the community gave input, that's awesome. So thank you for that. It's really important for our community members to see that. The questions, a couple of questions that I had when you were first going through the numbers and talking about the number of people that you had respond. My line of work, I'm very familiar with surveys, and I was very impressed by the amount of people that took time out of their schedules and their families to respond and share with you their feelings. So that was impressive. You had touched on, you received more input from the Hispanic and Latin community than you have in the past. My question to you is, was a survey available in more languages now that it wasn't in the past? Or is there, I guess what I'm trying to gather is, do we know why there's more input? And if there's other community members that are not providing the input, even though we had a great number, does it need to be translated into more languages? And what does that look like?
I can't speak to the previous. I can tell you that our outreach to individuals of Latinx, Hispanic background, we did what we could to get the word out. The random survey response wasn't nearly as much as the open link, but so when we put the open link out, we really pushed it, and that's where we got most of our responses. Christina can tell you, hopefully, I don't know. Christina, can you speak to what happened in 2012, for instance, or maybe the 2018 assessment, or is that even correct?
Yeah, for 2012, I can say that was back in the day when we relied primarily on printed copies of surveys still. So the online survey technology hadn't quite kicked in. And so I think utilizing online was really helpful, and having it available immediately in Spanish and English, and not having two different copies of paper, because we did have the papers survey available in Spanish and English, was helpful this time. And also just having, develop partnerships that we could promote through and with, and relationships there that really helped us push the survey. Other than that, I don't know, Kenny might be able to speak to the needs assessment in 2017.
Yeah, I can't speak. I didn't start until 2018, but there's some other aspects that we tackled with the marketing on this too. So one of the things when we did, part of our input was we went to community events throughout Springfield, Willamette events, non-Willamette events, and we had a voting component where we picked 10 of our projects that came out of the focus groups, and we gave wooden nickels, and we let people just drop votes in and then have a conversation with us. We had those boxes were labeled in English and Spanish, and we specifically targeted events that were going to be heavily trafficked by the Hispanic community. And then we also, through one of our own events, we did a special concert that was a Cuban band, and specifically aimed to have bilingual staff who are staffing those tables too. So the votes on that were one component, but the other part of it was we were trying to make sure we're getting the word out to take the survey, the open link survey, and that making sure people knew that you could choose to take that in English or Spanish. So I can't speak too much to the input we had before, but we did a lot of outreach like that to make sure that we're trying to push it a little bit further than we have historically as a district. And then we also did some marketing with specific Spanish radio stations. We made sure that we were translating materials. So just about every piece of marketing that we did for this was translated to English and Spanish. And I think combined that effort, it helped us get the word out a little bit more. It's still not where I think we'd all want it to be. I think we'd be much happier if we were able to at least match the census data. But it's an uphill battle. And I think that's also where some of the focus groups that we did a listening session with Latino Professionals Night, and that allowed us to learn even more about, if we do this again, I think we have a bigger playbook that we can roll out from folks that we just haven't been historically reaching, and they were kind enough to give us their time to give us a better instruction manual to do it better next time.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And of course, there's always room for growth and improvement, but thank you so much for including more of our community members. That's incredible.
Yeah, if I can add, we learned at an early age not to take a wooden nickel. But I will tell you that the district did an excellent job with their voting for the intercept events. Had 1,700 people put nickels or so, give them input. And that to me was just absolutely amazing. Very helpful.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Thompson.
Great. Thank you, Jeffrey. Great presentation, by the way. Awesome job. That actually answered my first question. I kind of had a two-pronged question. I was curious, and I think you, Kenny, talked about this, what specific efforts were made to specifically target minority populations and minority demographics, because those are stereotypically low contributors to surveys like this. It sounds like you did a lot of community engagement directly, so that's great to hear. My next question, and I think you touched on this a little bit, was the measurability piece. I'm always curious to see if there's any correlations that could be made from the data. So I was curious, based on the survey demographic responses, if there was, how closely or did that match the ethnic makeup of Springfield per census block data? Were there any correlations there?
Yeah, in some cases there was some demographics that were pretty close. Say for individuals with disabilities, we were within a couple of, I think, 3 percentage points. For individuals of Hispanic background, the survey respondents, I want to say, were 8 or 9% compared to 14% of the community. So it was down a little bit from what it could have been. We do weight the responses though. So we wanted to make sure that those respondents were representative of their overall I need to go back and look in terms of income and such. I will tell you that like other surveys, the survey was a little bit older respondents and were a little more female than the community. And that's not unlikely or that's not unusual for this kind of survey research.
Awesome, that's great. Last question in regards to accessibility. You talked a lot about, you did a great job of definitely identifying parks that were more difficult to get to by foot or have you. In terms of accessibility, if there was poor accessibility in certain scenarios, were recommendations for improvements included, and will those be included within the comprehensive plan that will be eventually added to the broad comprehensive plan?
Absolutely, there will be. In terms of accessibility, we won't spend as much time on ADA style accessibility because the district does have an ADA transition plan. But I can tell you that in terms of some amenities like playgrounds, one recommendation will more than likely be to continue to move away from the engineered chips that are found in the bottom of playgrounds for fall protection to more poured in place, because meeting the ADA doesn't necessarily mean that an amenity or component in a park is inclusive. And so, in other words, pushing a wheelchair through some of those can be a little bit challenging. And there's new technology and new opportunities coming right and left in terms of playground opportunities. We call inclusive or all-inclusive playgrounds. So, yeah, there will be. One thing to mention is, excuse me, is that we're looking carefully at barriers to getting access to parks, and we use what we call our 8 and 80 rule. Meaning that if there's a street or a railroad or something that you wouldn't let your 8-year-old to cross or your 80-year-old parent to cross without concern for their safety, that becomes a barrier. So to the extent that we can correct or fix some of those barriers or make recommendations to do, the level of service within the district will improve greatly. So, that would apply then to both individuals and individuals with physical disabilities as well. Again, much of the disability information that was discovered or that we found out in the survey and all in the demographics, some of it comes from the fact that the community is aging. And we just have to acknowledge that there will be more physical disability. But we do know that there's a lot of services in the Springfield area. That's one of the reasons I think that that you've got a bigger number of people that have larger population.
So one last question, just because you touched on something, forecasting. I love data in that respect. Obviously, we talked about the population is aging. So I assume that maybe some of your recommendations would be to obviously accommodate those aging populations. Did you look at forecasted trends again based on census block data or however that data is projected? If there are growth in certain populations, did you try to include that in your recommendations?
Absolutely. In fact, we went from 2 different sources primarily. We looked at the data from the most recent census as reported through Esri data analysis, but we also went to the Portland State Population Center and looked at their research. They're really very much the leader in population forecasting for the state of Oregon. And so we wanted to see how close the 2 of them came, and we're able to report what we think we're very confident with.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Gill.
Thank you. Thanks for your work and your presentation tonight. I very much appreciated the engagement with the tribes. I think that's critical. And I'm hoping that it was a breadth of tribal expertise and perspective from natural and cultural and recreational resources, because it's really broad and it's important to capture all of those in this kind of resource. So I'm really appreciative of that. I'm curious to know what the outreach plan is for post visioning, because I think that is a critical moment where people have given a lot of input, but hearing how you translate that input into what you put into a plan, sometimes might not be what they're envisioning when they're responding to the surveys. And also when that visioning happens and that plan starts to develop, being really, really clear about what potentially could go away. I see a lot in these longer range plans for schools and parks where it's really transparent what's new and coming, but not what is being removed to make those things happen. And then when that thing happens 8 years down the line and they don't get to comment on it anymore, it can be very frustrating. So I think that that's an important thing to talk about. I think that these parks and especially I think in Springfield are actually cultural resources in and of themselves. People have been having quinceañeras and weddings and baby showers and all the events in that same park, in that same shelter for decades. And that's part of the culture of this community. So I think that's an important consideration to have when you do the visioning, and then making sure that you're recognizing that significance for all the people in the community when you do that and present it. So I'll let you respond to that. And then I do have a cultural resources comment to make at the end of that.
Okay, thank you. Just respond first, comments about the tribal engagement. There was lots of great information. One of the real takeaways for me was there's a real desire for better corroboration, better collaboration with the district, and the engagement process gave us a laundry list of things that we can do or should do. And so I kind of asked Christina, I think Christina, the notes from the engagement are on the webpage, are they not?
We're in the process of reviewing those, and
Okay.
they will be up soon.
Okay, so you can look at them at a Parks and Recreation comp plan website close to you in the future. The second comment about where do we go after visioning? Well, we are going to have plenty of time between the first drafts that happened in January all the way through adoption in June, and we've built into that system, that process, a community comment period as well. But as each of the opportunities are presented, say to the board, and there's a draft document, it will be on in many different formats as we continue to collect and engage the community. We'll edit and change, and there'll be the next version, say. And so can again, the willamelaine.org/future, we'll have that. And again, we don't finish our engagement process until the point at which it's adopted.
Did Kenny and Christina, did you want to respond to that before I throw out my other?
Yeah, so one thing that is part of our playbook now is when we're doing anything like a park master plan, we have been, especially during COVID, we've been able to really expand our reach as to how and who we're sharing those with. We have some new technology, some new tools that we've been able to do with some town halls. Once we have the plan and we kind of know what that looks like, we don't know specifically how we're going to market that and communicate it. I do know it will be a pretty big effort from our marketing team to make sure that we are sharing that and being as transparent as we can about what this means. One of the other things that is kind of a challenge that we're going to want to figure out too, and you kind of alluded to this, with our master plans, for example, when we release a master plan, we have to be very careful to make sure that people realize just here are the elements that are actually taking place and on a timeline, and here's some other things that are part of a greater master plan. And we want to make sure that we're very, very transparent about that. I give Christina all kinds of kudos for this too, because one of the things I'm not concerned with are any of the groups that we've engaged with going into this process. These are now relationships that we've been able to foster. And I think probably the most important step is, especially for the people who gave their time to at least follow up and say, here is kind of what your time and effort went into. What we do with this long term is there's some variables in that, and how we communicate it to the public as a whole. That's really more of a marketing effort, but the relationship effort is something that we're very well equipped to continue working with these groups, and say it's not just a focus group and a survey and then you'll hear from us in 10 more years. I think that's really where Christina gets all kinds of credit, and I have the utmost confidence that we're going to be able to keep those relationships thriving because of this process.
Yeah, thanks, Kenny. I think Curry, you kind of nailed it, that the next phase is really to make sure that we're following through, because we do have those relationships built, and we do have a long list of people who are excited to engage with us and give feedback, which is really great. So I think we will probably be spending more time thinking about not just this project, but a continual longer term relationship. And so I have been trying to integrate like our DEI supervisor here at William Lane in a lot of the conversations we've been having, so she can be kind of a nexus of conversation in future interactions as well, and that it can integrate into our DEI strategic action plan updates that will happen in the future as well, to support some of the conversations and needs that our comp plan might not be able to respond to. And then also I was just going to mention that we do have a community engagement policy or strategy as a department, so that when we are implementing any of the projects in here, we have additional engagement we have to do. So it's not just, this is 10 years of projects that are going to be happening and we'll talk to you again in 10 years. We've identified some needs and desires and priorities and some hopes. And then when we have a project in line, we'll be going out to the community again and talking about those projects through the design and hearing and listening before it gets to the point of construction or development.
One of the other great things about the survey that is along those lines too is we had a section in there that was specifically about how do you want the district to communicate or market to you, like what are the channels that are effective. I've been here since 2018, and every year I've written a marketing plan. I feel like my marketing plan is essentially written for me now, because I have more insight as to the right ways that we can be reaching the community, and we can be reaching different individuals in the community we have been reaching already. So using that, I actually think we're going to use some of our needs assessment data and turn that into more effective channels to communicate about our comprehensive plan. So the whole thing is pretty symbiotic in that piece, but I think we know more now after this process on a way we can better form these relationships and continue to communicate. So I'm very confident we'll do well with it.
Awesome, thank you. That's great to hear. And I look forward to encouraging more people to participate all the way through. I did want to just throw out that the state goal 5 and the city's list of cultural resources, those requirements are pretty limited, and the city's list of cultural resources is very, very small. And parks are in places where cultural resources are likely to be discovered. And I presume that you might be attempting to access funding that is broad and possibly including federal funding. So just in your planning process, you might want to consider more robust cultural resource considerations, because that would be required if you had some sort of federal nexus in your projects that might not pop up in the city planning processes.
Okay,
Thanks again for all your work.
great. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cuevila.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, wanted to say that we definitely treasure Willamette Lane as a real amenity in the area. And a few things I noticed in regard to the information. The needs assessment said something about we need more parking at the senior center. Hey, we really need more everything at the senior center. When you go there, it is incredibly crowded and it is very well used. It's almost impossible to get appointments to get in on certain things there, because it is so crowded and so well used. There are a lot of people in the area of the senior center who are, again, older, disabled, living alone, apartment dwellers, etc. So they come to the senior center for both health and community. Really incredible to see how many people show up for the lunches there. So I would really say that given the demographics and the percentage of disabled in Springfield, I would like to see a stronger emphasis on maybe another senior center in another part of town. I don't know. I think when we look at that, the community centers under your scoring, they scored considerably above sports, and mountain biking scored even lower. At the same time, we are putting a lot of money into those facilities. And if it scored that low, I don't think it should be stressed that much. Again, appreciate what Commissioner Gill said about community celebrations, because Willamette does an excellent job of that too. We've got the Children's Festival, and excuse my pronunciation, but the Fiesta con Nuestros Vecinos, Holiday Marketplace, Camp Putt. There's just a lot of use on those things. A couple things concern me about a 20-year plan. 20 years is a long, long time, and there can be significant radical changes in demographics, incomes, whatsoever within a 20-year period. So I would hopefully see a plan that plans for flexibility in regard to that time frame. The other question I have is, Willamette was really well funded back in 2012 with a significant bond measure, which I'm wondering, now that's 10 years ago. How are we doing on that bond measure? Are bond funds running out? And is Willamette, are some of these great improvements that are planned, will they necessitate renewal of the bond? We should plan for, as I recall, I think the bond passed with like 55%. That's just, I mean, that's 10 years of, I'm trying to come up with 10 years of memory on that, but I don't think it passed like a, 70% or anything like that. So I would think that the plan would also need to be flexible if the people decide that they don't want to continue the park funding for whatever reason. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, if I can just comment a few things. First, it is a 20-year plan, but the emphasis really in the financial plan is only 10 years. And we want it to be a 20-year plan only so that we can look out as far as possible into what's possible. The recommendations will be grouped by short, medium, and long term, and the long term is only 7 to 10. And so we know that many of the long term opportunities may not be addressed in that first 10 years, and they'll roll to the next one. The second, I'll have to defer in terms of the bond to Christina, but I will tell you that we did ask folks in the community, would they support another bond for specific projects, and it was closing in on 70%, if memory serves me right. So it's a beloved district that people are willing to look to pay in another bond to build more. The emphasis on the senior center, I can tell you during my visits to the senior center, it's an amazing, the adult center they have is an amazing facility. You don't know what's behind door 1 or 2. I opened a door that I thought was maybe a storage closet, and it was a full range wood shop. So I walked down the way and I opened another secret door from my perspective, and there's a beautiful rock crafts facility where you can process and shine rocks into things. I mean, just some amazing, and that view out the window. It's a beloved facility. You're right, it's well used. We know the population's growing and moving, and during the visioning, that's going to be definitely a consideration. Christina, are you able to talk to where you are with the bond?
Yeah, and I think Kenny, thanks Kenny, he just put in some information. We do have a kind of a progress update and on that on our website. So that's probably the most accurate source to use to go and follow up on that. But I think the short of it is we have completed our bond and we have completed all the projects that were part of that bond yeah, we're pretty excited about being able to complete that. I think our last project was about maybe it was 4 years ago now. Time's flying. It's been a little while, but as a part of this project, yes, we will be looking at all funding options, I would say, and we haven't gotten to a point of identifying what the options are going to be. That's going to be part of our next phase of this project. The board will be involved with that, of course, and we will be allowing feedback on all of that through that the next phases of this project. So yes, the bond is one of those. Like Jeff said, it was included in our survey as our other possible funding strategies. It's one of the inevitable things is having to find ways to fund all of the great improvements and things we would like to be able to provide in the future.
Real quick, this is Christina Kraz, Assistant City Attorney. I just want to read the website off because we try not to, and apologies that we didn't maybe make this clear at the beginning of the meeting. We try not to use the chats for substantive information. We can't disable them, but we reserve that for like tech difficulties or needing to contact the host. So the website that was listed is www.willamalane.org /bond_measure_projects.php.
Thank you. And you can even just do willamalane.org/bond and you'll get redirected to that site too.
Even better. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks to both Kenny and Christina for making that clear for folks who may be joining us through the recording. Commissioner Schmunk, I think I saw your hand up previously.
Yes, thank you. I understood you to say that between 186 and 1,000 acres had been added to the facilities. Is that since 2012?
Yeah, Christina, could you talk to that so that we're absolutely accurate? I think it's, I thought it was close to 1,000 overall, but Christina?
Yeah, and unfortunately, the exact number is not in my head right now. It's a lot of numbers.
That it's 1,600. You got 1,600 acres. Does that sound?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's what we have currently, and I believe somewhere between 800 and 1,000 of those are new acres since 2012. I need to.
Okay. And so I guess in terms of maintenance of those is sometimes there's a range of maintenance where the downtown swim center would get that park's, always looks pristine. And then of course there's, long grass and some other spots. So there's a range of properties and maintenance. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, and so in terms of maintaining those facilities, will you be looking at the financial needs in a tier level? That is to say, if you lose funding, or let's say you lose 2/3 of your funding, do you have a base level of service identified?
We will be looking at park standards in the maintenance analysis. I can tell you that we know that just to give you an example, that in typical neighborhood park costs the district just under $2,000 an acre to maintain. An acre of open space costs the district just under $200 an acre to maintain. A typical agency, though, would be investing much more per acre than the district actually does. Every community is different. So when you say typical, we use a database with 1,000 agencies. We pull out those that are similar. And basically it's, you'd look for $5,000 or $6,000 an acre. And again, the district is a little less, but I can tell you that our survey data says that people are generally happy, that there hasn't been issues or complaints or concerns with the maintenance. Just ironically, at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'm sitting and visiting with the park maintenance staff from the district to talk about exactly that. Where are they with their standard, and does each park get the same level of maintenance? And then we look at that from an equity standpoint across the city as well, or across the district as well.
Okay, so how do you evaluate that aspect. You've identified folks by ethnicity and race, and then you're trying to apply that to how they're accessing the park and what parks.
Kind of. What we're attempting to do is to see what the quality is of the park experience that folks are able to access and where they live. And at the same time, some parks agencies will say, well, neighborhood parks get X number of visits per per week or per month. Some different kinds of park classifications may get less. Sports parks typically get a little bit higher level of classification, and they get a little higher level of maintenance. We're in the process right now of trying to understand exactly what those classifications are and what that level of maintenance is. And in fact, that's part of what our discussion at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning with the staff is. That's one of the next steps in the project. So I don't have any results to report to you, except to tell you that we are going through the process.
Okay, and can I then, last question. With regard to demographic analysis, can you distinguish that or differentiate that from analysis of ethnicity and race? I'm trying to understand how ethnicity and race is going to indicate how you would manage a park.
Well, what's important is that, well, I'll just put it this way. We can map where people live, and we can map where people of different ethnic backgrounds live. And we know if they're within their 10-minute walk to the park or close by, if their park doesn't have the same experience as other parks where other folks of maybe perhaps white people live, there's an issue there that we need to talk about and perhaps to cure. And in fact, indeed, that's the case in Springfield. The people that have more things to do at their parks, that have the parks that are above standard, again, have the least diversity, the highest income, and the I forget the other one now, but anyway, and the lowest crime. And so those are things that we need to look at carefully and pay attention to and figure out what's happened, or at least moving forward as a forward looking. Not unusual for park system to have areas where there are new parks to have higher household income or household value, because parks drive the value of homes. And we know that. But from the standpoint of the other two, we probably want to look at, when we look at the visioning, we look at the map, we've identified certain areas that are higher in diverse populations and lower in quality park components. And those are areas that we would recommend that maybe they have a priority to be improved. And that's important. What's important to understand too, though, is that all this is forward looking in order to help the district provide better facilities and programs. But in terms of overall amenities in the community and overall programs, when we ask people, are we meeting their needs? On a scale of 1 to 5, the answer was 3.5 on forward, which means that the community is generally happy that the district is meeting their needs already. But where can we continue to improve is really the question.
So I guess I'm struggling with how race and ethnicity are distinctive from normal demographics such as income, education, those things. You think that race tells you a lot about what the needs of that park are?
We can pull data from the survey to say by income. We did look by age, but the answer there is really no. The parks themselves would have this. It would have at least the 4 components and be able to have a quality experience. The problem is that in those neighborhoods that are higher in diversity, those parks don't have those components. And so what we're doing is pointing that out and recommending that we bring everybody up to the kind of an even playing level, that all parks have a similar level, a similar level of quality for the community. Because we are able to see there are certain neighborhood parks that are less, that only have maybe a walking loop and some benches. if that makes sense. It's not that the experience needs to be different. It just needs to be, we need to catch up in some of those areas. We need to provide a higher quality park.
Thank you.
Can I add one more thought on that? Another place where race becomes a factor in our planning process is just acknowledging, understanding who our community is. And so when we're having these community conversations and having people included in our planning process, we want to make sure that we are including people who are reflective of the people we are trying to serve. And so race is obviously one of those factors, you know, economic considerations, age, all of those are characteristics of our community and are kind of a good benchmark for us to look at when we're trying to do our engagement. And I think Jeff mentioned, you know, trying to adjust for areas that we might not be reaching in the results we get through our survey analysis and stuff as well. So we know that we're hearing from everybody, or we're representing everybody, hopefully.
Yeah, and household income is another item that's really important for us to map out and to look. Well, we know that 18% of district residents live at or near the poverty or below the poverty level. It's important that we acknowledge that. What can the district do? Maybe it's scholarships to assist to make sure that there's access for programs as wide as possible. And same thing with parks. We can map that and we can look at it. And indeed, we're attempting to break out all the information we possibly can.
All right, thank you. And thank you to all the commissioners for your excellent questions. Hopefully this is helpful for the Willamette Lane staff and for Jeff to move forward in their continued outreach. And we wish you the best of luck in your continued process. Thank you. So with that, the next item is reports of council actions by the planning commissioners. Are there any reports of city council meetings? All right, and yeah, just to remind you that information can be found on the Springfield Oregon Speaks website. I know there's been some updates to the look and layout of that website lately, but you can scroll to the bottom and there's a button that says for planning commissioners, and you can click that to see the calendar for when you may be assigned to report on a specific council meeting. So encourage you to check that. Any business from the Planning Commission? I have one item. I'd just like to point out that it looks like we got an email this morning regarding the updated housing strategy that's been updated with input from the mayor and council. So would encourage you to check that out and to also check your email to make sure you're staying up to date on fun updates like that. Any other planning commissioner business? All right, seeing none. Any business from Development and Public Works Department?
Just a reminder, as Chair Salazar mentioned, you do have a meeting in February, in December.
We'll also have meetings in February.
Yeah, probably. But one more meeting before we close out this year, and look forward to seeing you then. I have no other business.
Excellent. Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, everyone. I hereby close this work session, adjourn the session, and we'll see you all on December 6th. Thank you.
Happy